and her amazing blogging brain. So one of the questions that I hear quite often from people is, how frequently should I blog or create content?
It's a tricky one because essentially the more often you create content, the more fresh your website is. I mean, your blog is probably the primary area that you can actually refresh content. You know, your web pages probably remain fairly static, and Google's always looking for fresh content, so you can help increase your rank by blogging regularly. However, saying I'm going to blog every day or I'm going to blog every 3 times a week or something isn't always realistic. And so I think you've really got to think about what's achievable for you. You know, it takes time or it takes resources of some description, whether you're writing it yourself or you're getting somebody else to do it. So you've got to make sure it's sustainable in some sense, because the danger, of course, is that you blog consistently twice a week or whatever you decide to do for 2 months, and then you kind of fall off the wagon and you don't blog at all. And then suddenly you haven't got any fresh content. And if your blog is dated, i.e. it says when you published it, like mine is, and I haven't done it for so long, it looks like I've gone out of business. And I am, a typical example of somebody who said, right, I'm going to blog once a week. And I did it, and then I got busier and busier and busier, which is all very good. And now I just don't have time, or I don't make time for my own blog, which obviously is not a great thing for a blogger to be doing. So I think you need to be really realistic. So if you can blog once a week, fantastic. If that isn't feasible, then I would be looking perhaps every fortnight. However, you do need to think about how you're going to spread that content. So if you've got lots of different types of customers and you need to provide content for them at different stages, and you're only blogging once a month, then you might find you're not producing content for a particular customer avatar for 6 months at a time. So that's another factor. So I think you've really got to kind of work out what is feasible for you, and also maybe think about creative ways of creating content which isn't time consuming. So that might be, as Sumi was saying earlier, about actually getting somebody to submit guest posts for you. So you could perhaps have a regular spot in your blog where you get somebody else to write content for you. Or it might be that you're repurposing content in another way. So you might be regularly creating videos as well. So you bung one of those videos into a blog post. So at least you keep things going. The other thing actually, as well as videos and images and say infographics you could put in a blog post, are things like presentations. So actually I think the last time I blogged, I had a presentation for here, which I then put into SlideShare, which is a LinkedIn tool, and then I've embedded it into a blog post. So think about opportunities where you might be able to create blog content out of stuff that you're doing anyway. I think the other thing to help you keep on a schedule so that you don't fall off is to actually have some sort of plan, have a calendar. So if you work out the frequency of blogging that you believe you can sustain, and then you actually look at, say, 3 months in ahead and plan out all those titles. It doesn't mean that you have to write it. It doesn't have to be the exact title, but at least it's an indication of what you're planning to publish that week. Then it's much easier to stick to it, because you're not going to go, oh, I've got to blog, I haven't got any idea what I'm going to blog about. Similarly, with a schedule, perhaps the first thing to do when you're looking at that calendar is to factor in actual kind of calendar events. So as a business, you may have particular milestones throughout the year, maybe perhaps your Christmas sales, for example, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, all those sorts of things might be relevant to your business. Or perhaps there's other seasonality things which impact your business. For example, perhaps the new year, everybody's trying to get fit, so therefore there's particular types of content you can put out at that time, and that helps you build a bit of a structure, and then you can fill in the gaps in between with content that sort of ticks the various boxes for different customers and different stages of their journey.
one of the worst times to think about what you want to blog about is when you sit down to blog. Because
well, and if you've said
screaming.
I'm going to publish something today and you have no idea what that is, you know, that's obviously you'll get writer's block. So actually planning that out beforehand is, you know, the best thing, definitely.
And knowing when to hire services, because there might be a point, like you said, when you're starting the funnel, work towards the end and work backwards. When you're working backwards, as you said, there's a lot of archival material that you probably have that you can repurpose. But if you were not feeling confident that you had the conversion text or style ready, they could hire you, for example, and people could just say, right, for these points I'd like you to write, and then the rest I can supply content. It doesn't follow that you have to write the ones that give you the most problems.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that that kind of content, and sometimes it's referred to as cornerstone content. So you might have a particular blog post that really sort of sums up something, like what is a blah blah blah. You know, what is a IT service desk, for example, is something I was writing recently. Very interesting thing. It's something that you will constantly refer to if you're in that, you know, if that's your area of expertise. And it's sort of it's the type of post that sums up, you know, essentially exactly what you do. So that kind of stuff, if you have those things put in place earlier on and you make sure that they're highly effective, then you can then fan out to all the other content that sort of supports that. So, you know, there might be different types of service desks that then you join up, and then they span out into other things like, you know, it's a terribly boring subject, service desks.
But you can talk about the role of the service desk person performs in your business, and how what a business would look like without a service desk. And so there's many ways of doing that. And if you do get stuck, there are loads of ways. You mentioned BuzzSumo.
Yeah, to be inspired.
Good way to be
Yeah,
inspired.
and I think the other thing is also to think about what you actually do. So, you know, whether it's a service that you deliver or particular products, and have some categories that reflect those. So those categories are not necessarily my product. It's more about the subject that your product provides a solution for, or whatever. And then you can then, again, split up that calendar by making sure that you're talking about that area of your business in some way. So you say, okay, you know, half the time I need to be focusing on this particular product range, because this is my top selling products and this is where, you know, I'm going to generate most income from. And then 25% the blog posts are related in some way to this product, and that the other 25% are related to this product. And that again helps you build some structures so that across you know, a year or 3 months or whatever it is, you're ticking various boxes with your blog content.
There's also a really good website called answerthepublic.com.
Yeah.
And you can put in topics into that, and it will give you well, I've said it
Questions.
before, it's the searches that people search for on search engines. So what types of questions are people asking in and around the topics that you cover? It used to be unlimited searches. I think it's restricted to 3 a day now.
Yeah, but it's more than enough for...
But, I mean, the types of results that it comes back with can either be adapted for your specific circumstances, or are just bang on, like, wow, that's a great topic for a blog post, or those 3 questions would make a fantastic blog post. And so having to come up with the content yourself is, in some regards, the hardest part of it, because once you're on home ground and you know what you're writing about, it should be relatively straightforward. But there are a number of different ways and strategies. Katrine's just done an interview with one of her. So think about people in your supply chain you could perhaps interview, or good customers.
And your customers, yeah. Perhaps businesses that aren't competitors but complement your business in some way as well. So you can kind of provide a more rounded and, again, that more impartial, helpful kind of content. I think particularly with if you're going to start inviting guest blog posts from other people, is being quite strategic about thinking about who's actually going to be really beneficial to you, because essentially you'll be able to increase your reach with the right person. So, you know, there's no, well, it might be quite useful to have a blog post from somebody who has no social media presence just because they're really interesting and they're going to create content that people will want to read. However, if they do have a great social media profile and they're proactive as well and they're going to support that guest blog post they've put on your site, then you can also tap into all the people that they're associated with.
That's what I said to Katrine. Go to social media, go to Twitter, see how many followers they've got, and encourage them when you publish to mention your piece of content, because it would be of interest to their followers.
Yeah, and I would also recommend that, you know, if you're having guest posts, or perhaps you've got different employees within your business posting content as well, is to have some processes there in place to help people actually promote your content for you, because a lot of the time they won't think to, unless you actually ask them. So it might be that, I mean, certainly with a lot of my clients, when a blog is published, it's a notification goes out to the whole team, all their employees, saying, you know, we've got a new blog published, please go and have a look at it, and here are some ideas of what you can say about it on social media. So, you know, and so all they have to do is copy and paste onto their LinkedIn profile, because ultimately a lot of the time your actual employees or extended members of your team or associates have more contacts than your company webpage does, or certainly more useful contacts. So those employees then go out and they share that content with their networks. To boost,
medias that look and see how people respond to it, and if quite a few people are liking and sharing it initially, we found that there's a golden hour, especially with Instagram. If you can get some likes and shares in the first hour, it gets promoted beyond that.
Because I think a lot of people don't realise that when you, say, share something on Facebook or any social media thing on, say, your company page, it only gets shown to a small percentage of people. So, you know, it's like, I think Facebook is something like 7% or something for, and so and then they show it to more people if there's engagement. So Facebook then look to see whether it seems to be relevant, and their judge of relevancy is people liking it, clicking on it, interacting with it in some way. So if you can get lots of people doing that, you're going to actually increase it. I think the other thing is to remember that it is about having that infrastructure in place is so important, particularly for small businesses. And I think repeatedly I do see this issue where somebody sets off to blog, and I need to blog for my, you know, somebody's told me I need to blog for my business. And they're also very, very focused on increasing their page rank and being found in search results. If you don't have the resources to be able to do it, you know, and throw a lot of resources at it, you're not going to see your page, your website suddenly ranking in first place overnight. That's not going to happen. It's a slow burn. And if you don't have the infrastructure in place with your social media and, say, email and all those sorts of things, just pressing publish and expecting everyone to flock to your blog is just not going to happen. So you really do need to be able to back it up. You know, and that means things like having to grow your social media followers as much as having to actually create content. So, you know, there are probably, you know, often there are situations where I would say perhaps you're better investing your resources in something like PPC or something like that to get some quick wins if that's what you're after. And, you know, looking at blogging as a bit of a slower burn as you build.
6 months to a year of continuous output of content will help to cement any activity you're doing to generate higher ranking on your website, on the search results. But it's worth doing it, it's worth having that in place, because otherwise you're completely at the whim of how much
otherwise you're always going to be, so, but it is that thing of not thinking, you know, that a month or two of blogging consistently is going to solve all your issues with being found. It's making sure you've got everything else in place, and organic search and the social media side of things is really important. If you've got that, if you've got, you know, followers and perhaps you're using it for your own personal profiles, you know, just get those things in place where you go, you know, you say whether it's saying to your employees or whether it's saying to your customers or your friends and family for that matter, please share my content, help me, you know, and let's boost it and get it out there so people. The other thing actually is to think about with social medias and PPC is that actually boosting a social media update which links to a blog post is a really good thing to do, rather than just boosting your social media updates that relate to perhaps you know, a product page or something like that. Boost an article and get that in front of people. So, you know, if you've going back to the bad back scenario, if you had a blog post which talked about bad backs in pregnant ladies, for example, you could be quite targeted on, say, Facebook to make sure that it was seen by women in, you know, within an age range, within your location, because if you're perhaps a practitioner, then you're not going to be going to Scotland necessarily to treat a pregnant lady with a bad back. So you could actually boost that, and instead of it being come to my and, you know, use my services, it's like, here's an article that's going to attract a large number of ladies with bad backs because they're pregnant, which is a fairly standard thing to happen, who are in your target location as well. So, yeah, so it's a concerted effort. You know, it's not a standalone thing by itself, blogging. You need to have all the other bits in place.
And also, if you go on social media and you are sharing stuff, want other people to share it, Twitter did some research and you're 27 times more likely to have your tweet retweeted if you ask people, please retweet.
Yeah.
So don't forget to ask people.
You need to ask people. You also need to ask people to click on your link, because saying, oh, here's my blog post about blah, 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 without saying, click here, you know, that people just need instructions. And it's the same with asking your guest bloggers to share the content. If you don't ask, they don't think to do it. So, you know, everybody needs, whether it's, you know, sharing, clicking on something, retweeting, commenting, all that kind of thing. And another thing with commenting, for example, it's like lots of people go, oh, well, nobody ever comments on my blog posts, which, you know, it's quite nice when somebody comments on a blog post, but I think at the end of the day, unless, I mean, I'd rather somebody actually then took my next step rather than just commenting. But if you actually prepare someone to comment early on, so, you know, as you're starting to write, you could actually suggest to them, if you've got an opinion about this, please comment at the end. As they continue to read your blog post, they'll be thinking about what their opinion is and be primed to comment. So I think getting those kind of instructions in quite early, whether it is in a blog post or in a social media update, is really useful, because it actually makes people think about action and it isn't thrown at them where they're kind of like, oh no, I can't do that. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's priming the response that you want. Fantastic. Okay. Another one that I hear quite often is about writing, and I'm not a very good writer, so how do I improve my writing style?
I think a lot of it's obviously going to be practice, really. I think also if you can try and think about your blog post as a conversation, that will help. Then simple things like going for shorter sentences, that kind of thing makes it much easier. So writing in the first person, obviously that will help with that conversational style. Getting somebody to spell check is a useful thing to do. Bit of proofreading.
Now called Grammarly, which not only spell checks but does make suggestions for alternative words and sentence structures. So that's quite a useful tool.
Obviously, you know, reading things yourself. I mean, I think it's a bit like I always have this problem with my children, with them checking their work afterwards, and I think the same happens with when you're writing blog posts, is that you've written it and the last thing you want to do is read it again. Every time you get to any sort of punctuation, like you know, should it be Y-O-U-R or should it be Y-O-U-R-E? Read it out loud to yourself and break it down. You know, those sorts of things really help. But certainly reading your a blog post as you're going along and afterwards will really help the flow, because if when you read it out loud it doesn't flow, then you need to change things.
Yeah. And one of the things like years ago, lifestyle in a galaxy far, far away, told us, he said, write one day, edit the next. And
Have a bit of distance.
Really good people are able to do that the same day because they're able to get and reading it critically when you're not full of pride for your
or just desperate to get on with something else. Yeah. As much as you can, put yourself in your target audience's shoes. So, and it is hard because you're essentially reading your creation. But yeah, try and take that step back and come at it going, okay, I'm now my customer. When I read this, what do I think?
And one of the things that Google absolutely loves is if you go back and you improve old content. Really likes to see that you're curating your content well. So if you're stuck for an article or whatever, go and read some of your old content and think to yourself, how would I write that now? What do I now know? Or what has changed since I wrote that? And putting in an update that improves the article, and then sharing that again and saying, last time I published this, we had, this was...
We only knew this, and now we know all this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So is it new piece or back to the old one and edit?
Go back to the old one and edit, and and I think that's the other thing, is revisiting that old. I mean, in terms of sharing your content, don't just share the blog post that you wrote last week. If you've got something that's still relevant from 6 months ago, like Stuart said, go back and revisit it and see whether it can be improved in some way, or whether you can make it more up to date, and keep sharing that content, because if you've got all these kind of access points to your business essentially there, with different content for different people and coming at slightly different angles and exploring different subjects, you need to keep on telling them about it, because lots of them will have missed it the first time round. Other people might be new to you in some way. There might be a new social media follower, for example, and they're going to come back to it. They're coming to it with fresh eyes. They haven't seen it before. Also, seasonality plays into most businesses. Are there any organisations or things that happen on a yearly or annual repeating basis? I mean, if you
that
wrote
generate statistics specifically, because you can say, well, last year this was the case, and this year this is the case, and what's the trend? That's one of the strategies one of the letting agents that we're working with has put into place. Commenting on local housing trends based on the statistics that Rightmove have produced. It's given them wonderful engagement, because people are really interested in that stuff, and it comes from an authority like Rightmove. And that, certainly, if you can find places like Rightmove or those authorities or kind of organisations, whether they're industry organisations who are publishing content and reports and things that you can use yourself. So you could, find that latest report about, trends and statistics and so on, and then revisit it, because that also helps validate what you're doing. You're not you just making stuff up from thin air. You've actually got some other, business there or organisation who have done that research, and you're then putting your spin on it. And and again, forget to have an opinion. You can say, we've seen these trends, or Rightmove's report shows this, but actually we haven't noticed that happening here in Borden or wherever it is. This is our experience, and that makes, again, more engaging content. It's less disruptive. It's thinking, gets people kind of thinking that actually you do know you. And also that you're reacting to current events, and you're not just writing about esoteric stuff that you've thought up. A good way of staying on trend and staying on top of the stuff is to go to Google Alerts. So there's a service that Google offers you that they will email you when a news story occurs with specific keywords. So let's say you put in rain hats and say, alert me every time there's a news story about rain hats. And you will then, two things. One, you'll see the trend in your industry, as certain things come up, maybe time and time again over the years. But also it gives you a way to quickly comment and steer the topic of the conversation that you're having with your customers on social media to, hey, look, you know, this news story has happened. We wrote this blog post about something similar 2 years ago. It's really interesting. We'll be doing an update in a couple of weeks' time. So you're out there having that conversation with your customer.
I think all those things, you know, it's taking a holistic approach, because actually, if you set up Google Alerts for particular keywords that are relevant to your business, you know, there'll be stuff there which you could then perhaps blog about. There'll be stuff there that you could just share, you know, a link to whether it's the BBC website or whatever, and then you're collating content, and you're actually helping to show, you know, to show that you're the expert in your particular area, and that is actually being validated by, you know, an article, you know, written in the independent newspaper or whatever it might be. So, you know, it's that combination. It's not just always about you. It's also about other people as well.
Absolutely. And you can always go out and talk to your customers and say, what would you like to read about? And you know, write about the customer side of things.
And
running a survey, you know, to find out their opinion on stuff, you can then use that to say, hey, look, you know, we ran a survey and our customers feel this way about these topics. So that is another way of gathering some content to use on your blog.
And I think also finding topics that you can write about that actually turn your customers into advocates for your business is great. So if you can find things that they want to share, almost validate their decision. Says, you know, 9 out of 10 people do blah blah blah, and you know that your customer is one of those 9 people. They might want to share that because they can say, look, I've done this, I'm on trend or whatever it might be. So if you create that they want to share with works as well. It's about getting that message out, you know, getting existing customers to essentially refer you with, you know, not just by saying they're, you know, going buy from that business, but also by sharing your content.
Absolutely. Okay, so somebody's improved their writing style. How do they make their blog stand out? Differentiate it from the other 10 billion blogs that are out there. What can they do?
Well, I mean, that is very challenging because, of course, there are an awful lot of people writing blog content and probably writing blog content about your subject matter. So personalising it is definitely a big aspect of it. So not using the raw we, actually coming at it as a person, sharing your experience, sharing those anecdotes and things that differentiate you from everybody else. Writing content that actually is slightly disruptive as well. So, you know, if perhaps generally people are saying, you know, you should do X, Y, Z, well, you know, is there potential to actually suggest that somebody does something completely different? Writing content that's perhaps debunks a few kind of preconceived ideas about, you know, your industry and so on. Quite useful. So, you know, if yes, it's a tricky one to come up with an example on.
But I think that if you want to make your blog different, you've got to find out what your differentiation is to your customers. So it's no good going out there and being the same me too as every other business out there. Find out from your customers, why do they shop with you? Why do they buy from you? Why do they engage with you? What is it about you that makes you the person that they do business with? And again, you know, survey them, ask them, pick up the phone, talk to them and say, you know, why did you buy from us? And a really good question to ask, and I've used this one several times, is why did you nearly not buy from us? Because that gives you two things. One, it gives you something that you can look at to improve in your business, but can also why you differentiate from the competition.
You're writing about some, you know, that reason for not buying from you is another, because lots of other people will share that exactly that same kind of barrier or whatever it is, or concern. So again, you're kind of creating stuff which is not kind of so much. It isn't so much a sort of sale. I mean, as I've said before, it shouldn't be a sales pitch, but ultimately, you know, this content is marketing. But actually, it is a bit of a reverse psychology there by addressing perhaps a barrier that and mooting, you know, something that is a barrier rather than always presenting the kind of, you know, the ideal scenario of, you know, coming to you and progressing rapidly through your funnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think all of this goes back to you understanding who your customer is and, like you say, why they're buying from you. And you obviously having a clear brand message as well, you know, something that you can align all your other communications with, that differentiating factor.
Yeah, it's almost having a personality for your business that you're communicating on a regular basis. It is difficult, it's not straightforward by any means, but when you get it right, when you get that voice and that tone right, it really can resonate.
Because I've always found personally, actually saying to somebody that they shouldn't use my services is actually what makes them all want to use my services. You know, I work with a marketing agency in London a lot, you know, I'm sort of part of their team, and that's very much our approach is that, you know, we're not going to sell people services necessarily that they don't need. And so that's a lot of our content is about, if you actually need this, you know, maybe there's a better solution, and that's the most engaging stuff, because, you know, particularly with marketing and particularly with digital marketing, there's a lot of companies out there who are, you know, there's a sort of a bit of smoke and mirrors where everybody doesn't really know what they're doing, and you know, they're very good at selling their services, but then they're not perhaps backing it up, and so that kind of content that actually kind of is slightly more disruptive does engage people, because they want somebody who's actually going to tell them that not necessarily they need all of, you know, the whole caboodle. They, you know, that they need to spend their money in a more strategic way or something.
Always useful, absolutely. So, any tips where the good folk of the hub can read more about blogging and how to write good blogs?
There's numerous websites actually, and kind of organisations that share content about blogging. I would recommend HubSpot probably as your first port of call, really. They have blogs actually, so they've got a marketing blog, they've got a sales blog, they've got something else, so you can actually go in there, and you know, it's pretty comprehensive in there, and generally I would say I would agree with most of their advice. Then, you know, there's other sites like even people like Buffer, who do the social media. Their blog, obviously, you generate content via Buffer. So yes, those sorts of places I highly recommend. My own blog has a few blog posts on there as well, but they're all a bit out of date.
What is your blog again?
We Love to Blog for You, my website is.
It's
.com.
We Love to.
Two digits 4 you.com. Yeah. There's
James
cards over there,
James
yeah.
Cards are up there on the part of the signal team, so I'm minded
He's a
to.
lovely assistant.
Fantastic. Okay, let's ask some questions. Yeah.
On that subject, is there any sort of value in, if there's somebody in your industry that's really hot on blogging about stuff, can you sort of get the ideas from them and sort of read, not copy obviously, but find the subjects they're talking about?
Yeah, that's where most people get their ideas from. Yes, no, definitely. Actually, that should be a top tip for helping you improve your writing style and finding ideas to blog for, is to read other blogs, basically. And then to think about, you know, obviously not copying, but also thinking about what your take on it, you know, and seeing whether you can find a slightly different angle that is more relevant to your customers. Yeah. For example, from my own point of view, so I might find lots of articles about blogging that are aimed at large enterprises, but my target audience might be, you know, a small business. So I could take that content or that knowledge, I suppose, and appropriate it and then make it more applicable to my target audience, and you know, my philosophy, I suppose, as well, to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's, is it copyscape.com allows you to test your content versus anything else
Yeah,
that's
there's
available online.
there's also plagiarism tools as well to make sure that you haven't.
I think it's copyscape.com. You can put in your URL and it will check it against its index of the internet and see how much like content it is. So, you know, how unique that content is, and you want to find higher percent if you want to get that content ranking, definitely. Any other questions? Russell?
I haven't got a web page devoted to blogs, so is there any point creating a blog because there's nowhere necessarily
To put it.
apart from social media?
I mean, the advantage of having it on your website is because you have, ideally, like I say, it shouldn't be having any sort of sales pitch. That you're actually driving people to your website is obviously helping your website to actually have more salesy type calls. So when
Sorry, Jane. What's
Yeah.
your website address? Russell, is it? Karen, sorry.
So if it's sitting on your website, somebody, it's going to help with the SEO and everything, but a slow burn. and then they're on your site, they're reading content, but they've also got all stuff, whether it's your video, gallery, all those things they can store. Whereas if you're blogging, and you can do sort of long form blog posts on Facebook, on LinkedIn, there's LinkedIn Pulse where you can have articles. Issue with there, to a certain extent, is it's very distracting because, somebody's going to post a picture of their baby up or a kitten. However, in some situations, particularly say LinkedIn, with businesses that are very much B2B focused, you've got lots of people there and they don't want to navigate away. They want to actually kind of, exist in that LinkedIn bubble. For example, like say recruitment consultants and things like that who are using it really proactively. So it's a good place to actually place that. So I think it's really about choosing the right platform for your business and aligning it. I mean, I would have thought that you really should be able to just put a blog on your website. But
You've got WordPress, haven't you? Yeah, it's already all built in. All you need to do is literally start blogging and put a link to it in your navigation. Depending on how your theme is set up will depend how it's styled, but the technology for you to be doing that is already there. And what a lot of people don't realise is you can actually email your WordPress website, so you
With
can
your blog.
actually write something in an email and send it to the blog.
there are other platforms, obviously there's WordPress.com, which is the hosted version of WordPress, and this is essentially what WordPress came out of as a blogging platform. So this is more of a community blogging site. You've also got Tumblr. There's Medium, which is very good.
Yeah.
Again, depending on your business, and I'm not sure that your business is probably a great fit, because when you're blogging in a sort of a community type scenario, it's probably more appropriate if you're really trying to build your professional expertise, and become that person who's the person who knows everything about, I don't know,
Kitchens.
yeah. But from your point of view, you very much want to get people onto your website so that they can see what you've done for other clients and so on, and they can see those case studies and stuff. So I think you should definitely get somebody to have a look if you can't see it behind the scenes where your blog is, but if you're on WordPress, it's there definitely.
And I mean, the topics for yourself are kind of, they write themselves. What's trending in kitchens now? A long-lasting kitchen, a good family kitchen. All of that kind of stuff. That's the type of things that people are looking for.
And then things like also content about how to perhaps manage a kitchen build. How long is it going to take? Should I move out? All those sorts of questions as well. So that kind of onboarding type content is quite useful, I think, for people, just because what they want to know is that you're not going to trash everything. They want to know that you're going to look after it, that if they're living in the house, you're going to keep the disruption down to a minimum, all those sorts of things that essentially you and your team are nice people, that when they turn up, that's, you know, they don't mind you being in their private house, that kind of thing.
You
So,
could do a
you know,
great blog post. I think we talked about this as a timeline. So, you know, this is where you are right now, but this is, you know, week 1 we do this, week 2 we do that. And you can literally build it out as a timeline so that goes through to the different blog posts.
yeah.
You can do recipes. I was thinking about you the other day. Yeah, because I'm a professional. No, it's just that I'm in various slow cooker, you know, those kind of things. And you did actually, this is the time where you're not going to have your kitchen, maybe even link to that timeline.
Right.
But here's some ideas about what you could do. Here's a slow cooker. You know,
You give them
you
a
give a slow cooker. They're so dirt cheap. Buy from a Wilco. You give them a slow cooker and say, look, this bit is if you don't have one, bung it. Here's your recipe. That's dinner for that week.
You
And,
give them
and that kind of content is your customer advocacy content. It's the stuff that people will want to share and say, we had such a great kitchen company and they even gave us recipes and a slow cooker to help us manage it,
you
you
give them
know.
a kind of portable kitchen, don't you?
No, that's your idea, Stu. That's not coming to
Right. But what you could do is, here's a 2-ring, you know, propane gas burner and a microwave, and here is 10 things that you can, family meals. Yeah, that was it. But if you went with it, you know, it's going to take 30 days for this. Here's 30 recipes that you can cook with this. That do you know what I mean? That is the sort of thing that makes people go, wow, they've thought it through to the point where they even give us the recipes to cook in this tiny
And I
kitchen.
think what it's doing is it's delivering that customer support for prospective customers
How many
long
other
before
kitchen
you
companies
know.
do it? Unique. Then you become a unique business that nobody else does.
Just refer them if they've got pets to me and we've got pets.
We've got lots of questions answered there about blogging. Before we go, please give it up for Jane, who's come here. Fantastic, wonderful, brilliant. Some questions, and hopefully with your input as well, you can ask questions as well. And
Thank you.
So, first question we need to know: how do you write a good blog? What tips can you give us?
I think the first thing is you need to know who you're writing for. So there's no point in you writing for yourself because you're, you know, no point because they've said, oh, that's they're not perhaps a customer of yours. You need to writing for. You need to have a clear idea, and that is essentially your customer. So you might have kind of customer. Your blog post might have to sort of target different groups at different times. That kind of customer they might not know what the solution is at that stage. Content for them, but you also have content that you need to create for somebody who kind of knows what they need, but needs assurance that you're the right person to buy from, or that your solution is the right solution for them.
Research specialist, and what they discovered is people go through 3 distinct stages when they're looking. There's a research phase, there's what they call a brand, and there's the buying phase. And so one of the things that they are saying is don't expect to show up for the buying phase for search if you're not prepared to put in the information online for customers when they're in the information stage. And these 3 stages, uncannily for any marketer, are basically know, like, and trust. Okay, somebody can't buy from you unless they know about you, and that's where the research comes in. Then they're not going to buy from you if they don't like you. So the information they get from the research, they dig into a bit more deeply, and then nobody buys unless they trust. So actually blogging is feeding into several of those
I mean,
steps.
typically, say HubSpot, which is sort of an organisation that's it's a content creating organisation. They also host websites and all the rest of it. Their methodology is that you have attract content, convert content, close content, and delight content. And they put blogs very much at the attract stage, where you perhaps don't know who you're talking to. They're strangers who are coming to your website. They're not people that have bought from your business before. And then your convert stage might be some sort of download or something that you get to say an email address for, so that then you can sell to them and you can give them closed content, which might be case studies and so on. And then the delight content is stuff which is content that they will then share themselves and become kind of your a sort of brand advocate for your business. I would say that blogs can actually fit in a lot of those stages. So although you might have one of my sort of examples of the sort of marketing funnel for somebody who's going to reach your bad back, customer doesn't know necessarily what to sort their bad back out. Searching for, how to cure a bad back and things like that. As somebody who's perhaps, an acupuncturist or a reflexologist or whatever, you could then at that stage put out content which is very much impartial, addressing the kind of key things that somebody could do to solve that problem that they've got. And one of those things might be your services. However, not saying buy from me at that stage. You're very, very much saying, here's an impartial blog. These are your options. I'm giving you value. I'm building trust with you because I'm sharing this information. I'm not trying to sell to you. I'm just trying to do the best I can for you and help you. And then later on in the funnel, you'll might be something along the lines of, here are, download this guide or something like that to help solve your bad back, which might be a load of self-help tips. And your close piece, which again, because the thing is that although ideally you get somebody at that attractive stage and you push them through your funnel, you may actually get them coming to your website who are at different stages of their journey. Content, and they've already kind of seen it somewhere else, and perhaps they've already gone, oh, actually I need an acupuncturist, and then they found your website. So further down the funnel, you can also provide them with that content where it might be a piece about why acupuncture is the best solution for a particular type of bad back, and then you might have something which is like a case study, but perhaps in the form of a blog post where it's sort of anecdotal, talking about how somebody presented with exactly the same symptoms your customer avatar's got, and how you were able to improve their life and add more value by going above and beyond.
Yes.
And then again, you've got the that content that they can then use as a brand advocate, which they might share with their other friends who also have bad backs, and so you actually can tick all those boxes and take them through that funnel, or attract people who are already at different stages of that funnel.
And one of the things that pick up on one of the things you've said there, we spoke about these different stages. Can you have the two types of content, so the attract and maybe the conversion into further down the funnel on the same page, do you think?
I think you can. I think in some cases, and I think it's always going to be very specific to what your topic is, and also to a certain extent what your services are. But typically, I would expect, say, an attract blog post to provide the reader with lots of really useful information that engages them, makes them feel like you actually understand them, that you're giving lots of impartial information. You're not saying, please buy my services or, you know, buy this product or anything. And incidentally, there was a survey which I must find it again, but it was something like 70% of people reading a company blog post believe that it's impartial, even though it's sitting on a brand's website. But the minute you put a call to action that is salesy, like visit my product page or, you know, call me for, you know, to chat about your requirements or whatever it might be, which has a sales pitch to it, that just plummets to something like 29% or something. So instead of doing that, if you have a call to action that's much more of a conversion thing, like maybe it could be to go and read another blog post that takes them further down the funnel, or it could be to actually download some sort of asset, or it might be to do a quiz, something like that, and particularly things which are lead gens, where you can actually get their email address in exchange for them getting this amazing, valuable resource, and then you've got that opportunity to market to them directly, provided they ticked the opt-in box. So yes, there's no reason why you couldn't have maybe several stages within one blog post.
Yeah, having a call to action doesn't necessarily mean calling people to buy something or do something.
It's the next step. Yeah, and that's the other thing, is you need to understand what that next step is for the customer at that stage of their journey. Because if you try and take them too far along, that, you know, potentially they're going to just drop out because they're not ready. The other thing I was thinking when I was kind of rehearsing this in my head in the shower this morning was a blog's quite a good opportunity for somebody to self-qualify. And so although your aim is obviously to attract all these people and you want them to convert them into customers, actually sometimes it might be a good opportunity for somebody to go, actually this isn't for me, because at the end of the day, if they then continued in that funnel and then got in touch with you, and then you kind of went, well, actually, I don't want to work with you, or you're never going to buy my products or whatever, it's been a huge waste of your time. So a blog is actually an opportunity for them to kind of go, actually, this isn't for me, for whatever reason it is. So it's quite a good way of making sure that the people who do continue through the funnel are self-qualified. And then,
that's
you know,
true for marketing in general. You'll hopefully, it's a filter and excluding people as much as including people. So a blog is a good opportunity.
I mean, I think a lot of people get very focused on, oh, I want X many, you know, huge volumes of hits on my website, or I'm chasing these keywords which have huge volumes of searches per month. Ultimately, for your business, can you even cope 200 genuine customers coming to you in 1 month? Or actually, do you just need 5? In which case, let's make sure that by all the content that you're giving them in the form of blog posts and everything else you're doing, whether it's on social media or web pages on your site, are just making sure that the people that actually potentially pick up the phone or click the buy now button or whatever it is at the end of the day are genuine, good quality customers that you want.
Yeah, not all traffic is created equal, and what you find is the people that convert quickest are the people who have the hottest need, and as you grow your traffic, it effectively becomes cooler and cooler and cooler, depending on where that traffic's coming from, etc. But so you might need more steps or more in-depth content to turn people who are maybe further up the funnel into prospects and leads.
I think there's always a danger with any, particularly with digital marketing, and particularly people like ourselves who go, oh, you've had X many hits on your blog, or you've had so much traffic coming to your website and stuff, and it sounds fantastic. But at the end of the day, if they haven't converted, well, it's a complete waste of everybody's time. So it's actually about quality more than volume.
Absolutely. Okay. So what makes a good blog?
A good blog is, I suppose a good blog is something that's engaging, essentially. So you need to make sure that somebody, first of all, is attracted to it and they actually click on that link, and that might be because they're searching for something on search engines, or it's because it's popped up in their, their newsfeed on Facebook, or they've had it from you, perhaps in an email, or somebody has shared it in another way with them, and they've actually clicked on it. And the next step is you want them to stay on there because you need them to get to that next step. So it's got to be engaging. However, of course, some people are are just sort of looking to validate that you know what you say, you know what you're talking about or whatever, and maybe they haven't got enough time to read your entire blog. So the other thing is to make sure that they can still take that next step. So typically I would say that perhaps after the second paragraph of your blog is that you do actually have some sort of call to action. So for those people who haven't got time or go, actually, yeah, they know what they're talking about, I don't need to read the rest of this, that's fine. You've got something that tells them what they need to do next. And then for the people who are still not quite 100% sure or do need more information, you take them through, and it's about providing value. I think that's the biggest thing, is that you're not selling to them, B, you're not just telling them how to suck eggs, or then you actually understand who they are, where, what information they need, and you're adding value. So you're giving them more than just, 5 tips for, they can pick up anywhere else.
The research shows that the majority of first place positions for long form content comes to about 1,600 to 2,000 words. So writing in depth about stuff, some people call it skyscraper content, allows you to not only demonstrate your expertise, but actually gives you a chance and a forum to talk to your customers in a way which does genuinely help them, rather than just, here's something,
Fluffy.
here's another thing, 5 tips.
I think, though, that the other thing is if you know who your customers are, you also know what volume of content they need. I mean, if you know your customers actually just need to dip into something, a blog post, although, yes, Google would prefer it if it was, 1,500 words long, that, there isn't any point in creating that kind of content if you know your customers are going to switch off after the first 200 words because they don't have time.
Oh, absolutely.
So if your customers only have, a couple of seconds, then you need to make sure that you deliver straight away in, an appropriate way. Or maybe that your customers actually need something a lot more visual. I was, again, thinking about this in the shower. I was thinking about, because I do a lot of work with B2B businesses, so we're essentially selling services rather than consumer goods. However, obviously, as a consumer, I also search for things and, come across people's blogs and stuff in that sense. So I was looking for content the other day because I wanted to decorate my son's bedroom, so I needed ideas. And of course, a lot of the content were images, and that's all I needed. I needed to see some pictures of teenage boys' bedrooms, so I could go, okay, that's what I need, a wall decal, and so that's what I needed. I didn't need loads of text. So if you're that person who's selling these big stickers for walls and stuff, something visual, like a sort of designery kind of ideas thing is much more valuable than you talking about describing. So it's about knowing your audience, and of course aligning that with your products or services.
One of the things that can really help is, once you know who your target customer is thinking in depth about the problems that they face as they move towards purchasing whatever it is you're selling.
So,
knowing that journey.
yeah, so the journey for me with this wall sticker, which ultimately I bought, and now I've actually bought another one because it was so popular, was that I needed something that was fairly low budget. I needed something that was quick so I could transform this bedroom really quickly because it was away for a few days. And I needed something that meant that Granny could still sleep in the bedroom without being offended. So, and so the barriers were things like how difficult a wall sticker would be to put up, the quality of it, those sorts of things.
You didn't know.
Yes.
And
so
don't know to ask.
Yeah, exactly. So having had that attraction content, which kind of was like all these amazing images that went, oh, that's what I want for the room, was like the next question I had was how expensive would be, a massive big sticker, and, could I physically put this up? So then I started looking for information about, reviews and things like that.
So in fact, there's several pieces.
And there's a gap in the market because none of those people were putting the content out to say, that what you need to do is this, and giving you perhaps help of putting these stickers up and stuff. Instead, you got lots of reviews saying it was really difficult.
Well, I mean, you see, with just that very simple thing, you could write a blog post about how to choose the right thing for different themes and give pictorial examples of that. You could then do a video which shows you putting it up. The company could do a video showing you putting it up and
You
showing
can have
you
like a troubleshooting
the
page.
what happens if, and 10 tips to getting a good outcome. All of those things are various pieces of content that could come together and make that skyscraper content.
Yeah. Or a funnel of some description of separate blog posts.
Absolutely.
But so I think there's a lot of scope. And of course, something like that, a consumer's product that multiple people sell, a business can really differentiate themselves if they do actually put that content work in, because like I say, it wasn't there as far as I could see. All I could find were kind of customer reviews on Amazon and stuff, and of course some of those aren't very favourable. So actually there's an opportunity there if you're doing something along those lines, or a consumer product, of almost taking ownership of that and creating that content. And certainly when something, perhaps there are negative reviews for a particular type of product, might not necessarily be your product, but perhaps there are challenges to using a particular product, you can actually counteract that by putting the content out there that actually resolves those problems, and you build trust with people. I mean, why would you bother to buy from somebody else if you found a website where somebody's telling you exactly what you need to do, and they've got exactly the same products as everybody else, same price, but they're giving you all this extra help. So,
You're anticipating answering frequently asked questions.
Yeah, and the barriers as well. I mean, there's always, whether it's something that in theory is a nice thing to buy rather than something that solves a problem like backache or something, but there are always going to be certain barriers people have, whether it's on cost or time or skill or whatever.
You can address all of these with additional tools you might require, or here are the 10 decals for somebody who's never put one up for the first time. So there's lots of ways of looking at what you do as a business that you perhaps step over on a regular basis, because hey, you're the experts, you know what you're doing, but the end user doesn't have that knowledge and he's constantly going, what does the product look like from the inside or the other side? I want to know these things.
And I think it's...
So if you're writing that text and you mention that second paragraph where then they would go off if they've had validation and they go off, would you basically within the text answer that question, like if you want to know how to put it up, I've got a helpful, here's how to...
Yeah, I mean, you could perhaps give them some basic information, and then if it's perhaps more in depth, then it could be a link to something else. I mean, essentially, a lot of that information is kind of customer support information, isn't it? And that's another thing that I think a lot of people are looking for before they make a decision to buy from someone, is that there is the support there, having done it. They want to make sure that, they're not going to just buy it and you're going to run off into the sunset with their money. They want to make sure that you've got it. So if you can actually demonstrate that, and use customer service type content in your blog posts and in your sort of attraction content or conversion content, then I think it can be a very strong message.
And also think about the different ways of delivering the content. And we were talking about blogging, but blogging doesn't necessarily mean just typed out content.
No, I mean, obviously images, infographics and so on. And of course there's lots of opportunities and when we were discussing earlier about video, you could create a video which you then repurpose in different ways, so it can sit on your blog post. And one of the things with video, of course, is because it is video, there are no keywords embedded into that video. There's only what you say that video is about. So, for example, if you were to upload it to YouTube, you've got your description fields and you can tag it and you can put a title and so on. And that's what's going to tell people that this video is about blah, blah, blah. However, if you then take that video and embed it in a blog post, you can give a lot more information in the text to say what this video is about. So you can help, you can support your video content to rank highly, and also have a blog post that somebody who perhaps doesn't want to actually read text, because lots of people don't want to read a lengthy blog post, they can access the video. The people like myself who actually like reading can go forget that. I don't want to see Stuart dancing around. I'll read what he has to say instead.
Yeah, and also it's simple things like on YouTube where you've got the description. If you put the time in, so 00:00 as the format, and then like 1 minute 10 or 2 whatever, that becomes a hyperlink. That when the person clicks on it, the video jumps immediately to that point in the video, which means that if you're talking about specific topics, let's say you've got 6 steps to putting up a decal, you could have step 1 and then a brief description that then the person, when they're reading it, go, I might, take it out of the packet, I got that, but I want to know what step 3 is. They can click on it and the video immediately jumps to that point and then they can see it. So if you go to the Borden Hub's YouTube channel, when we did the testimonials, I put a link to each person individually, so they didn't have to sit through everybody else's just to see where they were, but it also allowed me to put keywords on of your businesses and your business names. Obviously that's good SEO practice. So there are ways of incorporating the additional content in ways that can add to the user experience and not just, because it's good SEO. So video, like we say, images, so something like that's a kind of a interior design type blog post would have to be very visual, because what are you going to do? Describe a room, it's got blue curtains. Try and imagine it. But so lots of images there, backed up with text that explains what those images are. So for example, if it was an article about how to ideas for a 15-year-old boy's room, then every image would have a bit of text that actually references 15-year-old boy's bedroom and various keywords that are associated with that. And then you would have some sort of call to action. So if you were that wall decal person, then you would perhaps have a link to how to choose a wall decal or whatever, that kind of content. Yeah, and then you could do different themes and include that sort of content. And then you can have a summary content, which is our 10 best blogs about teenage boy or teenagers' bedrooms. So,
but I mean, I was going to just butting in. I would always also think about, so we talk about the sort of attract content that takes you through a funnel. Let's think actually about what's at the bottom of the funnel first and get these assets in place. So rather than just writing that attract content and then kind of going, okay, I need to point them to something else and I actually haven't got anything else, let's sort of be much more strategic about it and think about what people need further down the funnel, that content in place, and then you can then start linking to all these things. So potentially, with some of my clients, we've got sort of, content which is points you to a download. You've got that download in place. You've got your email marketing funnel, which has links to perhaps content that's for closing a client. So, for example, certainly with the B2B, ultimately when you come to close, it all comes down to whether they're going to get a good return on investments, they're going to get value for money, how easy is it to onboard, say a service provider, all that kind of content. That's written as blog posts, which people obviously who are coming to your site perhaps at different stages of their journey anyway can access. But that actually is linked to from that magical asset that you've created. And then you've got numerous opportunities to write your attract content over, months and months and months, coming from all sorts of different angles that point people into these funnels. So, so I would say try and think about it backwards as well. Think, if you're going to take them on this journey, you need to get all those assets in place that are further down the funnel before you start writing that attract content.
And if you want help with lead magnets, we did a hub about that earlier on in the year. So go to the Borden Hub members Facebook group, and there's not only a video about it, but the workbook as well that you can work through, and you'll end up with a lead magnet that you can then implement on your website. So actually that moves us through quite nicely, because you're talking about the funnel and obviously a point where a conversion happens and they become a lead or possibly a customer. So how do you write a blog that helps people? The things that you need to put in place?
Well, I think I think what you need to do, I mean, firstly, when I'm writing blogs, I tend to be having a conversation in my head. So I'm actually having a conversation with that customer, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm talking to that person in my head, actually do, or maybe actually I'm muttering out loud. Luckily, nobody else is around. Using a kind of, which is sort of, you know, summarizes your topic and might be the thing that somebody would actually physically search for, you know, how do I do this? And then and then by having that conversation, really should be writing in the first person, because this is your expertise, you're expressing and using kind of the royal we. You need to, this is you building trust as an individual, that potential customer as well. And then giving them this information, what they need. So you go through that. I think that it's also important to make sure that you're differentiating yourself as well, because of course lots of other companies we do. Good if you could perhaps actually be a little bit disruptive, you know, and you potentially you might say something along the lines of, most people would tell you to do a X, Y, Z, but actually you need to do whatever. That kind of thing makes people actually stop and go, oh, okay, it's, you know, somebody's coming from a different angle. And I think being honest as well, you know, building trust. Remembering that you're not selling, you know, this is, you're helping. I think that's the big thing, is to say, you're not selling, you're helping. How are you going to help somebody who comes to you and says, you know, how do I blog or whatever? Well, you know, if I was selling, I would say, well, if you want to blog, you just need to use my services. And, you know, but instead, I'm going to just tell you how to do it, because that's what I want to do. You know, so that, I think that's the best thing, helping and having a conversation with someone.
Identifying topics that people are looking for is also part of writing something that people will engage with and read. By going to your Google Analytics and looking at the popular pages on your website, because those are things that people are finding and engaging with. So those are obviously topics people want to know more about.
If you're blogging for any length of time, similarly, you look at the blogs that people are visiting again and again. Ultimately, it all comes down to actually knowing your customer. I mean, at the end of the day, actually really understanding who your customer is.
How do you find out?
So generally, your website will give you analytics, but there's a really great tool called BuzzSumo, BuzzSumo, and you can put your website address into it, and it will actually give you what it does. It's not the most visits you've had on your actual website, it's the most interactions you've had on social media. So it's people saying, liking, or clicking on a link and so on. You can do that to competitors' websites as well. So it's a great way of going, okay, that business is blogging about, you know, whatever it is. Let's find out what's popular, because social media is quite a good benchmark of telling you not just what people are searching for in search engines, but actually what people are engaging with. So they might not have actually clicked on it, but they've kind of gone, that's got my thumbs up because that's something that I'm, you know, interested in, or it resonates with me in some way. Maybe they haven't got time. So that's quite a good tool to have a look at.
That's a good tool. It says total engagements, and linking domains, and backlinks, and all sorts. I did Texas and there's loads. Usually about people listening.
Yes, because that's the thing. You can check somebody else's website, but you can also put keywords in. So you can come up with a list of the most, you know, of different content. You know, it will be blogs, it will be articles of news items. It does come up with, I often find that it comes up with job ads, rather annoyingly. But that's probably some of the keywords I have to use to research. But that will trawl. You can do it location specific. You can do it in time frames as well. So you can see what is sort of trending, essentially.
I think it's also important to remember that you're not writing to an audience. You're writing as if you're talking to
An
a
individual.
single individual. And I think that that's a mistake that a lot of people put into their content, is that they feel like they're broadcasting a message. and it doesn't feel personal. So it's that late night DJ moment where it feels like that you're the only person that they're talking to, and they're whispering to you about the stuff.
And the other thing is storytelling, which is a bit marketing, but storytelling is generally a really good way of writing a blog post, and that you sharing anecdotes. You might open your blog post with a kind of, I was chatting to someone the other day on the train. That kind of thing actually gets people to go, oh, this isn't just some company broadcasting, this is an individual who's sharing their insights or their experience or whatever it might be. And if you take them through a story in the beginning, and then with some sort of moral at the end, which is obviously to take your next step,
and a twist. Okay, so don't think that you just have to be vanilla with your content. People want to read something which really gets their brains ticking.
I think again, it depends on your business and what you do, but having an opinion, so many people don't express an opinion, and actually you can, it doesn't mean that you have to be political or anything like that, but you can actually have an opinion, and you can say, in my opinion, and those sort of little linguistic devices, like saying, in my opinion, and so on, can really personalise your blog post. So, it might not really be...
Don't be afraid to put your personality into it.
Use I, and tell stories and reference, things in your life. And you use golfing analogies or reference that I was on the golf course and these things, because that means that they go, oh, I want to be your buddy, or I want to buy from this person because they understand me, they're
boring, this is a hat, this does that. That's great. But why not say the last person who wore this hat became, king of Abyssinia in 2076? Just crazy stuff that makes people go, what's that? What? And shares it, because ultimately, if you want to succeed online, you only need two things. You need great content and backlinks. Okay, so that's a link from another website to content. And with those two things in place, you'll rise up the ranks. But to get really good backlinks,
nobody's going to
really great.
Yeah, nobody's going to share it if it's just like everybody else's content. So you need to make sure it stands out. The other thing I think with blog posts is to ask your audience questions. But you need to be prepared that if you ask them a yes/no question and their answer is no, i.e. I'm not interested, that's either your self-qualifying question, which means that that person goes, no, actually, I don't need that, or I don't have that problem, or whatever, and that gets rid of all the, essentially the time wasters. Or if they say yes, then you know what the next step is. They've said, here's your question. Yes, I do have this problem. Okay, and it will take you the next step further through the process in the blog.
Just out of interest, how many people here are blogging already? Okay. And of the people that are not blogging, maybe what's stopping you from...
There are two things that I have blogged in the past, and I stopped blogging. The two main reasons is an inability to come up with anything interesting that's new, which is embarrassing to admit, but it's true.
No, that's right.
And secondly, not being sure what level to aim the blog at. It's quite interesting, using your decal example. Most of our customers have some experience of our product before, but some customers have no experience. Some customers have lots of experience. So getting the blog to be at the right level, I find quite difficult.
I think that you need to say that actually you do have maybe 3 different customer avatars essentially at different stages. So you write a blog for the person with no experience, but you also acknowledge that if somebody's come to that blog with experience, actually you need to be over here. So you kind of go, or if you are familiar with our products or with, whatever the subject is, have a read of this instead. Take them away from that content that they're not actually really going to engage with, and keep the people who aren't experienced, so that you can actually, share your message and give them those calls to actions and so on that are relevant to them. But I think trying to do one size fits all is never going to work. And I think, certainly getting that balance right. So when I start working with clients, obviously we look at what the frequency of blogging is going to be, which generally comes down to their resources as much as anything else. And then we look at their various sort of customer avatar buyer personas and how important each group is to them. So you might say, well, actually, I need 50% of my blog content has got to be for existing customers, because we all know it's easier to sell to an existing customer than a new one. So you need to know existing customers, 50% of that blog content. 25% is for complete strangers. 25% is for somebody who perhaps bought 2 years ago or something like that, a returning customer, and structure it that way. So you're kind of going for the more productive target audience with a certain amount of content, but you're still meeting the needs of other.
Yeah.
I've blogged in the past, and one of the things that I want to prevent from before is the fact that I want to do a proper editorial content schedule. I mean, I know from the past, and I've worked with other people to do that. And at the moment when I blog, it's sort of on my Facebook page, but I want to come off Facebook. But my style on Facebook is conversational and blogging. But with the LWG stuff, what I want to do is to also collect guest bloggers, so that I'm not doing it all on my own. And I want to match it with the editorial sort of schedule and our strategic plan. So actually, once I'm going, the content will be there, because I think it's providing the continuity of content and actually finding the time. So this time around, I may hire people, I might get guest speakers to come in. I'm putting together a database of curated content, so I can just dump it through. So I'm step planning, because I want to avoid the issues that I've had before, which is the bringing out the content, and I'm not going to do it daily. I'm going to be quite sort of structured, so it might be fortnightly or monthly for some longer pieces and shorter pieces. So it's all sort of a strategic planning.
I think also when you're looking to plan content, there are a lot of people I've had conversation with, I don't know what to write about, or I don't know how to structure it to attract the right people. When you're having a conversation with a customer, if you speak to the customer, listen to the questions they ask you, because that can dial you into the types of content that you can be thinking about. The second one is read through old emails that you've sent customers about your business and about what you do. Have they asked you very specific questions? Have they asked you generic questions? Can you take that content that you've got in your emails, anonymise it, and make it more blog friendly?
And certainly that kind of follow-up content. I mean, I generally will work with a marketing team in the company, but I'm always going, please give me access to your sales team, because what sales need to follow up. Because I'm not saying that the blog should replace a phone call between a salesperson and a customer or a prospect, but when they've had that phone call and they've explained, this works or whatever it might be, wouldn't it be great if they then had an opportunity to send them a link to a blog that reiterates all those points? And it's another opportunity of not saying, have you thought about our phone call last week? What's your decision? It's actually an opportunity to say, here's further to our phone call, here's content that's might help, and it keeps the business in front of a person's mind. Similarly, perhaps a follow-up content which is actually aimed at another decision maker within that business. So you may well have been speaking to a buyer, but the finance director has actually got to make a call as well. So provide them with content in a blog post which somebody could come to freely of their own, having searched or stumbled across your website. But equally, you could then give that to that buyer and say, this might be interesting, perhaps you might want to share it with the finance director or whoever.
And you can also, once you start to blog, you can start to tell people what blogs to read. So you could write a blog that says, this is the process that someone goes through. So, Veronica, somebody building something, there's a distinct set of phases that they're going to go through, and you could write a blog post about each individual one that's quite long, but then write a summary blog post that says, these are the 10 steps that you need to build an extension. We've got a more extensive blog post on each one of these steps here, which will give you further information. But so there's a generic one where somebody's researching, what do I need to do to get an extension? And then there's the people that have researched the extension that are then looking for specific information about what style of roof should I choose, or what style of rendering. And then you can put those in, so you're demonstrating that at each stage that they can drill into the content and find out more information.
I think people feel sometimes I'm giving away all my trade secrets, but the difference is they can read it, they can look at all these free videos and the content. The reason they're not succeeding is because they're not delivering, they're not actually acting upon it, implementing it. And a lot of the time people who are service providers are the ones who are turning that knowledge into some sort of action. So let them look and build up that.
I think, yeah, because my approach has always been that you're always going to have people who are looking for the information because they're DIYers, they're going to do it themselves. They're not your customers, but you might as well just put that information out there, because it's not it's not going to cost you anything, because you're not losing a customer, because they never were your customer. However, what you are doing is you're helping educate your customers. So it means that perhaps it's a question of somebody's been charged with finding a service provider, and they might not have they might not really understand it. Maybe they're somebody's PA or something who's been told, go and shortlist a load of IT service providers or something like that. They need to understand what they're looking for, and they need to educate themselves. So you put that information out for them. You also then put out the information for the people who've then got to actually go, okay, thanks for this shortlist. How do I actually benchmark these different providers? Actually, request for proposals and all the rest of it. So it's an education process, I think, as much as anything. For B2B, for B2C, it's also about inspiring people as well, and getting people excited, and giving them aspirational ideas and all that kind of stuff as well.
So here's a quick tip before we break. Who would like to appear in the search engines for their competitor's name? Yeah. So somebody types in your competitor's name and your website appears. So what you do is you write a blog post which is the top 10 people in the area that deliver X, Y, or Z. And you include all your competitors, and you do a little review and say, these guys are really good if you want X, Y, or Z, and da 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 da. It gives you a chance to say to me, but I'm putting my competitor on my website. It's like, yeah, Google. People have Google. People know about your competitors. At least you're getting a chance that when somebody types in your competitor's name to say, we also exist. So you have to be careful, obviously, respectfully, but that's the way of creating content. When we come back, see you. This is your first time at the Hub. We've got the gloriously wonderful, glamorous Louise. If you'd like to stand up and follow her through to the kitchen, she'll explain what the Hub is all about. Fabulous. Thanks very much, Jane.
Thank you.
We'll be back.